couple of minutes to a little village in southern Uganda. About 10 years ago, as I was coming out of a hotel, I noticed a long group of people coming, and they were carrying with them a stretcher, a makeshift stretcher, and the gentleman I was with, I said, "What's this?" And he said, "Well, we're going to the hospital." I said, "What's the problem?" He said, "Well," he said, "these people have come from a long way, and all these people are accompanying the stretcher so they can take turns carrying it." So I said, "Please find out what the problem is." So he went and asked the people, and he said, "There's a child in here that's sick, has a diarrhea for several days. They're taking him to the hospital, holds badly dehydrated, and they took him down the road to the hospital where they have a special district ward there, and the child, like many, many others in that country, died." And I said to myself at that time, "This is not right, and I do not want this to happen again. And I'm going to do what I can to try and change the water, at least for this area." So I went back to Canada, and I met a man who came to me. He said, "You know, I'm very successful as a businessman and so on now." He didn't tell me that, but I knew that. But he said, "I want to be significant with the rest of my life. What can I do?" I said, "What do you do?" He says, "I've been in water science for the last 40 years. And so I said, I'd like to be part of using those skills." I said, "Come with me." And that man is here tonight, and I want to introduce to you Bob Dell, the co-founder and president of the Water School. Thank you, Fraser. So, this bottle is over 10 million a day produced around the world, and a subject of great consternation and discussion in this part of the world is saving children's lives in the developing world. Take contaminated water, pour it into this bottle, lay the bottle on its side on a hard surface in the sun for 6 hours, and it destroys the pathogens that are causing children to get sick and die. So after 6 hours in the sun, the water is drinkable. 10 years ago, when I met this good friend of mine and went to Africa, I had two experiences that impacted my decision to do this work. The first one was I was laying in my room early in the morning, second morning I was there, and I heard this singing. And it was children. I thought it was a children's choir. In fact, I thought it was choir practice. But it was 6 o'clock. That was a little early for that. But I looked out my window, and there was this long line of children with 5-gallon empty containers, jerry cans, I guess you call them, in a line, singing and heading out. So I asked that day where they were going, and I was told they were going to get their daily supply of water. And it probably was 10 o'clock in the morning when I saw them come back again. So I asked if I could go with them the next day. And they thought that was pretty funny. You probably noticed I'm Caucasian. I didn't really fit in. But there was this long line of children with this crazy white guy trailing them to their water supply. And we went down valleys, we went up hills, and we walked for an hour and a half. We came to the top of this hill, and I looked down at the bottom of the hill, and there was a pond with probably half a dozen at least cattle in the pond. And I thought, wow, there must be a spring close by here that they're going to get the water from. But truth was, we walked down to the bottom of the hill. They moved themselves up and got the cattle out of the way and scooped up their water from the pond where the cattle were drinking and doing the other things the cattle do. So I had this terrible feeling. And quite honestly, I think if I had my flask with my scotch, I would have taken even though it was 8 o'clock in the morning, a shot of scotch. Because I couldn't believe what I saw. After 40 years in the water treatment business, I knew what they were drinking. So we went back to the village with them, halfway back, there was this little 9-year-old girl, I remember, and she was struggling with this container. These things weighed 50 pounds. And I asked her if I could help her carry it with her, and so I took it, and I carried it for about 100 yards and gave it back to her. I couldn't carry it. So we got back to the village, and I was interested at that point to go to the clinics and see whether these children, how sick they got. And so I visited some of the clinics and I asked the question, did these children get sick? And the answer was almost casually, of course. And then I discovered later that in this particular area, for several years, the death rate from waterborne disease, mortality rate for children under 5 was as high as 20%. And that was just the mortality rate. The other factor was the amount of school that these kids missed. So that was one incident. A couple days later, this fine gentleman took me to another village. And we went to this village and we visited the village elder. And we talked to him because we always like to engage the people at that level. And we said, do you have water problems? He said, no, our water's pure. So we said, that's good, can we go and see it? So we took this not too far away, and we saw this pond, and it was full, it had pond scum, this thick on it. And he went over, and he parted the pond scum, and he dipped the water up, and it was the most terrible looking water I've ever seen. But he said, this is our pure drinking water, and that scum on top is God's water filter. And that's what's cleaning our water. So you have this image of a lack of knowledge and education, and that water was terrible. So I came home, I came back to Canada, and I had a little chat with my wife, and I said, I think our retirement plans are going to change a little bit. I went and sold majority interest in my company, I stepped down as president, and I took it upon myself to try and find a solution for those kids. So I went back, and the first thing I wanted to do was test that water, because I knew what it was, but I wanted to test it. So I got my petri dishes and everything ready. And what I want to tell you is that we use something called E. coli to measure whether the water is contaminated or not. E. coli is an indicator of fecal matter. So that's our indicator bacteria. So in this part of the world, the water that our children drink, of course, doesn't have any. And in fact, if you make the test and you find one E. coli, you shut the water source down. Now, one E. coli in the test I was doing would be one blue dot. So this is the kind of water that our children are drinking. You don't see anything there. So I went and tested that water from that pond that I'd been to the first day. And the first test I ran, and here was the water. 30,000 E. coli per 100 milliliters of water. And I couldn't really believe it. So I looked at some solutions to the problem. And here was the frustration, ladies and gentlemen. All the things that I've been familiar with for 40 years were things like drilling wells, using filters, doing chlorination, reverse osmosis, all those wonderful things that work very, very well here in this part of the world. And every time I looked at those solutions over there were problems. Number one, people are very, very poor. They can't afford a lot of those solutions. I didn't really want to start hauling chlorine around into the rural areas of Africa. It's a dangerous chemical. I didn't want to put water filters in. They're about $80 or $100 a piece. And I did see some water filters over there that had not been maintained and were being used to store milk in. Maintenance is not high on the list of priorities in that part of the world. So my frustration was, how can I find something simple, something that doesn't come from dependency on us to ship over water filters, chlorine, and all these things, and create dependency. And I came across this simple sort of process by looking on the internet one night, and found that this process had been studied for many years. It had been studied by a professor from this part of the world at the American University of Beirut in Lebanon. And he did all the first studies, and that took place was on